Hello and welcome back to Confident Business English. If you're a senior manager and you work in an international company and you want to build your confidence communicating in English, you are in the right place. Whether that's because you feel very anxious when you communicate, even if you have to do it quite a lot already, you may still feel very uncomfortable doing it. It may take up a lot of your preparation time. You're manically spending Sunday evenings preparing for the meetings that you have, or it's just taking up a lot of your mental energy. You're constantly worried, am I saying things right? Am I communicating the message properly? I don't think people are understanding me. It's just taking up a lot of your mental energy. In that way, building your confidence really gives you the freedom from that anxiety around speaking in English. On the other hand, also, building your confidence can mean saying yes to more things, feeling more comfortable to go for opportunities that maybe perhaps you haven't before, or even seeing a possibility that you might not have thought about before. Perhaps that's transferring to another country, taking on a role that you've never really thought that you could do, but this opens the door and you see a pathway towards that. In which case, I would say that confidence then helps you to have freedom to do whatever you want. Building your confidence might be getting that job, which enables you to have better financial conditions, live a better life ultimately, right? Could just be that you feel comfortable to walk into a room of people and start a conversation with whoever's there, rather than sitting awkwardly at the table because you don't feel comfortable to go up to people, or being visible in the room. You know that you have things that you want to say, but you just do not feel comfortable saying them in front of other people, by which case you're not visible in the company. People don't know all the work that you're doing. You're not sharing this really valuable input and feedback that you have for other people, which is really a shame, right? An interesting perspective to flip that on its head is within sales, there's advice where when people start a business, for example, and they don't feel very comfortable selling things, another perspective to counter that is, well, actually, by not creating something, by not producing something, you're actually depriving people of something that could be really useful and helpful. If we apply that to your situation, it's a case of, okay, by not speaking up and not saying something, there's actually something really useful that other people could get from what you're saying, and you're actually depriving them of that. It's just another way to look at it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just a little bit of perspective. Anyway, I digress slightly. That was a bit of a long intro. My apologies, but I was just going with the flow. Those are the things that were popping up in my mind. Let me introduce myself in case you haven't listened to this podcast before. My name is Anna. I'm a coach and specifically have had training in neuro-language coaching. I'm 35. As they say, 35 is the new 25. I am British, in case you were wondering about my accent. I was born in Scotland, but only lived there for a couple of months of my life and then grew up in England. I've also lived in Liverpool. And then I moved to Madrid in 2017, and that's where I've been since. As I said before, I coach senior managers from all over the world: Spain, Portugal, France, Belgium, Italy, Poland, Germany, China, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Brazil, and also a lot of expats from those countries that are living in other places like the UK, for example, and the United States. And I've worked with people across a plethora of industries: finance, HR, manufacturing, logistics, oh, you name it, I've done it. And it's such a fascinating part of my job. Agriculture, I'm just thinking about some other ones here: sales, retail. I mean, really, some very interesting interior design, very varied. It's one of the things I absolutely love about the job. I work with all these professionals on my one-to-one coaching program, which is called Confidence Accelerator. And then this podcast, Confident Business English, is essentially my training program for you. Every single week on Wednesday, I release a 15-minute or around there episode. And in that, I try to squeeze in some really practical tips that I hope will help you build your confidence. We focus on different things, whether that's a technical side of the language, it might also be to do with the mindset, because that's also a really important part about this, or some communication tools that you can use to make your life easier. What professionals tell me they really like it is that it's very to the point, it's very useful, and also the delivery of the podcast. So you will get to know me and the way that I am by listening to the podcast. You may not like it, in which case, oh, right, you can switch off and go to whichever other English podcast you like. But if you find it useful, I really encourage you to follow and subscribe and listen in every week to get all the tips. The normal episodes, let's say, run from September to July. And the new season for the podcast is going to be starting on September the 16th, 2026. Now, between now and then, I'm still releasing an episode every Wednesday so that you can get your confident business English fix, as it were. And today what I've done is I've cherry-picked, a lot of you say that you love that word, to cherry-pick something is to choose the most important or the best bits, like the cherries, because they're really nice. I have cherry-picked some of the key takeaways from a live stream that I did last year on October the 5th, 2025. So I've extracted some clips from there and I'm going to go through them with you today. So let's crack on. My favorite phrase, as you may know already, people just ask me about that. I know I've touched about it before on the podcast, but let's crack on is very British, by the way. I remember one of my clients saying, I said, let's crack on, and my American colleague thought it was really strange. So it is a British phrase, but it's like, let's go, let's do it, let's crack on. And I don't know why, but somehow it just became the catchphrase of the podcast. But there you go. First on my list then, we're going to be answering the question, trust or confidence, which is kind of a small but important difference, especially for you when you're out there talking as a senior manager. My question to you would be, do you trust your team to deliver? Or are you confident that they will deliver? They sound very similar, right? And people would probably understand you, even if you used either one of those, but they don't communicate exactly the same thing. Just a quick heads up as well, this sounds not great because my mic had given up at that point, and so it's the mic on my webcam, so it's a little bit echoey. It's not amazing, but I thought, well, I'll still share it with you because you might find it useful. Hope it's okay and not too deafening for your ears.
My client was explaining to me that, they were talking about their forecast for next year. I'm sure maybe some of you are doing this type of exercise now where you're looking towards 2026. Strategies, plans, all of this type of stuff. I asked her to give me her overview. How are things shaping up for next year? Shaping up just means, how are things looking? How are things developing? She said something along the lines of, well, we're really, the outlook is really positive. She said that. And for next year, I'm looking forward to it. We've got a lot of different initiatives in place and we really trust our sales team to reach the objectives. Okay. Now I was like, well, I understand you perfectly when you say, I trust our sales team. Rather than do a good job, let's come up with something else. Trust our sales team to make this happen, for example. But trust is not quite the right verb here. You could use it, but there's something else that I would use instead. Can you write in the chat and tell me what you think the right answer is? Believe? Okay, yes, you could say that. If you wanted to sort of show conviction, I believe our sales team will make this happen. Actually, who was it that said that before? Gorka, yes. I am confident our sales team will make this happen. And you might be like, well, what's the difference? They're both the same. Confident, or to be confident, or to have confidence is about people's abilities and skills. And trust is more to do with the person, right? Are they trustworthy or not? Can you rely on them? Do they do what they say they're going to do? It's not quite what we're looking at here. What we're saying is, I have confidence that our sales team will make it happen.
Just to add to the previous Anna's point, they aren't exactly the same. You can have confidence in somebody's ability, but not necessarily trust them. And equally, you could trust somebody, but you don't necessarily have confidence in their abilities. Does that make sense? It's a good way to think about it, to show that they're not the same. I mean, ideally, of course, we'd trust somebody and have confidence in their abilities. That would be the double whammy, right? Fingers crossed. Okay, moving on. Another clip here from the live stream. This is to do with talking about personal issues at work. When something difficult is happening outside of work, how much should you actually say? Maybe you need to cancel a meeting or rearrange something in your calendar, but you don't really want to tell people your life story, right? Which is completely understandable. I would be exactly the same. In this extract, then, what I'm going to do is look at some natural phrases to help you communicate clearly and professionally without oversharing or doing a little bit of TMI. TMI stands for too much information. You might hear this if you work in an office in the UK, for example, and we might say this in colloquial, casual conversations or as a joke if we're very comfortable with that person. But we would use it if, you meet somebody and within 5 minutes, like their whole life story, or they're very emotional and they tell you something that you would consider to be very private. And you're like, I don't really know what to say. TMI? You may have a colleague who, and I've worked with some people like this in the past, and really lovely people, no bad intentions whatsoever. But sometimes they leave you in a position where you're like, I don't really know what to say, because they kind of have a tendency to overshare, of course, from my perspective. So you might ask them something like, oh, how are you? How was your weekend? And they're like, oh, well, I went out for this meal on Friday night. Oh, it was terrible. I had explosive diarrhea all weekend. I was just being sick everywhere. And then on Sunday, my cat died. And then I got a parking ticket in the post. Great weekend. What about you? You're like, okay. Yeah, it was fine, thanks. So TMI, too much information. Maybe we could actually even apply that to English communication. Oh, I like that. Maybe that could be one of my new phrases, TMI, a little bit like sumo. If you've listened to that episode before, shut up, move on. If you go blank during a presentation, just keep going. Maybe TMI could be a way to remember to be concise. Too much information. Oh, I like it. Maybe I'll include that on the next season. Anyway, my goodness, let's go to the clip. Wow, I'm really digressing today. Imagine if, like in my case, I had to take a few weeks off in September because I had a family issue. One of my family members was ill and I had to go back to the UK. Now, you might have something like this happen to you. What can you say? For example, you could say something like this: I'm really sorry. I have to cancel the meeting because I have a family emergency, or an urgent family matter. And I'm going to even just add a little bit onto that. I'm going to say, because there is an urgent family matter I have to attend to. The reason I wanted to share those sentences with you is just because maybe you might not want to reveal to everybody that, I don't know, your father or your mother, is in hospital, or a sister or a brother or whatever, or wife, husband, son, daughter. Maybe you don't want to reveal that to this person. Maybe it's not somebody you know very well. Maybe it's somebody that's external to the company. So these are some really more generic ways to express that, more natural ways without actually going into too much detail, which I think is great for these moments. So I just wanted to share those with you because those are some of the sentences that I used when I had to reschedule things recently. To add to what younger Anna was saying, you could definitely use those in a spoken context and also in an email or a message too, because I imagine that you might have a situation where you're not actually speaking to that person, but you send them an email. So to wrap up, a couple of clips there. I hope that helps you feel more confident with both what's the difference between to trust your team and to have confidence in your team, and also some things that you could say if you're in a difficult situation, but you don't necessarily want to reveal that to everybody. Next time, we'll try and go through a few more examples. My apologies, but I was a little bit of a chatterbox today, but I thought I would let it roll. But I will keep it to the 15 minutes. Let's wrap it up here. Pleasure, as always, to be with you. If you enjoyed that episode, make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. If you would also like to get even more of my business English tips that I don't share on the podcast, you can sign up to my Friday newsletter. The link is in the description box. All right, see you same time, same place next week. Bye-bye. Take care.